What's going on, guys? Welcome to Saw is War. My name is Dustin, and it is a great day to talk about wrestling because this week has been one of the crazier weeks I can remember. We had NXT Heatwave and WWE Money in the Bank back to back last weekend, which brought up a whole bunch of storylines and a whole bunch of news outside of the main storylines. And then just a strong week for AEW. They're closing in on their 250th episode of Dynamite next week. And it's clear they are going all out, no pun intended, to make that as big a Dynamite as possible. So, run through the week here. We got a lot of big storylines in women's wrestling in particular. If you are a fan of women's wrestling, this has been one of the busiest weeks that I can remember, honestly. So, run through everything here really quick, and then hit the main topic for today, which is that at Money in the Bank, John Cena made a surprise appearance to announce that 2025 would be his last year as an in-ring competitor, and kind of just running through what that's going to entail and what his impact has been over his career. So, tons to go through. If there's anything I miss, anything you want to shout out in particular, please leave a comment. You can always email as well. Put that in the description, in the show notes. Appreciate anyone watching, listening, anything like that. Anyways, let's get to it. So Monday Night Raw didn't really feel like the biggest, best show. There was another Wyatt 6 segment that kind of just continued the same pattern with the box, with the VHS tape. But something that was kind of funny about this is it was during a match between Chad Gable and Jey Uso. And Jey Uso gets the win off of the Wyatt distraction. And he's like looking around like ready to book it because it's been established that whenever the spooky stuff for the Wyatts happen, he just takes off immediately. So he looks around, and then before he leaves, he has to get one yeet in, like, and then he books it out. And it was just such a funny, well, he's such a funny person, just such a naturally funny person that being able to show his personality like this is just such a boost for his whole persona. But the tape with the Wyatts this week was interesting. It was a little bit more about each of the members and Bo Dallas kind of describing what brought them all together. And then it was another interesting thing is for the first time in, I want to say 4 or 5 years at least, we also saw Bo Dallas like live on screen during the broadcast, like in the building. He popped up in the background of Adam Pearce's office. And like I've said before, this storyline has been incredibly well done up until this point. And I'm super intrigued in what it's going to look like once they actually start like wrestling and having them all interact and what this kind of rollout is going to be. But in terms of like maintaining interest, I think they've done a very good job. And then the other big story from Raw, like I said, it wasn't really the biggest episode, but the other huge story that has probably SummerSlam implications, if I had to guess, is that Rhea Ripley is back. She has returned after being out a few months with a shoulder injury caused by Liv Morgan. Obviously, the Judgment Day Liv Morgan storyline makes up like a 50% of Raw, it seems like nowadays. And of course, they had a great ending. They've really, wrestling all around has been killing it on ending shots and moments. Recently, this week was no exception to that. Rhea Ripley comes out and catches Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio celebrating a mixed tag team win over Zelina Vega and Rey Mysterio. I think it was the first time Dominic Mysterio has ever beaten Rey in any of their matches against each other, which is kind of cool. And she didn't say anything. The pop for her was unbelievable. The people were basically ready. It's like the worst kept secret that she was going to return this past Monday. And did not matter. The fans were ecstatic to see her, and just a stare down to close the show. And now apparently she's being listed internally as a babyface on the roster, while the rest of Judgment Day are heels. So I don't know if this is like she's going to start to break away, or if there's going to be a whole thing with Damian Priest, and it'll end up just being the two of them. Something that I thought was kind of interesting was that throughout this whole Judgment Day Liv Morgan storyline, while she's been out, while Rhea Ripley's been out, Damian Priest is the only one that hasn't, like, for lack of a better word, like betrayed or, like, gone against her. like Finn Balor and JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio have all had positive interactions with Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan has helped them all win matches. Carlito's there too. I don't think he's a part of Judgment Day, but he's there too. And it just feels like that was all done for a purpose. Like, it feels like they're setting this up to be like a Rhea and Priest versus the rest. And I just thought it was an interesting detail, because then when he says, "Oh, I just got off the phone," like they have the backstage segment with him answering the call, and then he says, "Oh, I don't want to tell you what the surprise is. You'll find out." Like, it felt like, oh, okay, so he's the only one she's talking to. It kind of keeps up the whole thing of like her being mad and disappointed at the state of things, and it just added a nice little extra layer to it, I thought. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how much that plays into whatever we're actually going to see on screen. NXT was another solid show as well, fresh off of the stunning Ethan Page NXT Championship victory at Heatwave. They went right into the tried and true WWE formula, which was take all of the main event caliber challengers and the champion and put them in a tag match. You would have thought Teddy Long was there with how fast they put this tag team match together, and nothing wrong with that. Otherwise, though, it was a really TNA heavy episode. The Rascals reunited, which was a huge deal. It was Trey Miguel and Zachary Wentz reuniting with Wesley. I don't know what Wesley knew in terms of, like, if it just said you're going to get interrupted, go out there and talk about maybe quitting NXT, and then you're going to get interrupted, but we're not going to tell you who. Or if he knew who the whole time, because that dude, if he knew that it was going to be them, he might be the greatest actor on the planet. Because the emotion he had while he was like cutting this promo, right into the emotion that he was showing, seeing them and hugging them and having that moment with them, it feels like it couldn't be anything but authentic, honestly. And in the main event, Javon Evans was taken out before the match, so Trick Williams was forced to find a new partner, and he did, fresh off of his viral appearance last month. Say his name. He appears. Joe Hendry in NXT on the main event, getting a huge pinfall victory over Shawn Spears. Looked great. Had the crowd going crazy. Blended right into the WWE style of matches and performance and everything. I am not a huge repeat viewer for TNA, so I'm not super familiar with a lot of these guys' ring work. So I don't know if it's like, executed pretty similarly on TNA. I have an idea for a video I might do later involving every wrestling show, so we'll see about that. But I thought Joe Hendry fit in great here. I thought he looked great. They said a story that he had been in Scotland on Sunday. So he wrestled in Scotland on Sunday and then was on NXT in the main event by Tuesday, which is just crazy to think about, like in terms of travel time, distance, and everything in between. Like he is really grinding to keep up with, I'm sure, the increased demand after all of his viral escapades so far this year. So it was really cool to see him. It's awesome to see the Rascals reunite as well. They're going to have a 6-man tag team match with Gallus next week that is probably going to be awesome if I had to guess. But it's just so cool to see, in particular, Zach Wentz get the huge welcome back chants and the MSK chants and everything, because those guys, Wesley and Zach Wentz, when he was Nash Carter in NXT for their tag team run as MSK, those guys were like insane. They were pretty close to must-see, can't-miss matches when they would be on. So I'm really excited to see them again. And Trey Miguel, someone who I'm a little bit familiar with, a little more familiar than with other TNA wrestlers. But I'm really excited to see what it looks like, because it really felt like a cool way to use Wesley that isn't the North American title and doesn't push him right into the main event right away. Because I think when he does go to the main event, I firmly believe he should probably be NXT champion at some point before he gets called up, because I think he's too talented not to be. So this is a perfect way to keep him away from that scene while doing something that really has like a lot of heart to it. And on SmackDown, we got our SummerSlam title match established. Solo Sikoa is going to challenge Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Not a surprise here. A lot of people saw this coming. especially after Solo pinned Cody at Money in the Bank in their 6-man tag. So I'm a little, like, I think it's going to be a good match. I have faith in the two of them in putting on a good match. I think the more I think about it, the issue that I have is the credibility strain of Solo Sikoa. Because leading up to WrestleMania this last year when Cody finally finished the story, it didn't feel like Solo had that same, I hate to say it, that same aura as he had early in his run. Like, he didn't feel like an unhinged, dangerous enforcer. He kind of started to feel like the pin eater for when Roman Reigns and the Usos couldn't lose because they had titles or something. Like, it hasn't felt the same, and I think that's been the issue, is he hasn't been wrestling on TV as much as I would like to see him stack wins and build himself as a credible threat. But that's kind of a double-edged sword, because you're trying to put him in this role as the new tribal chief, and you're running this whole storyline where he's going to be in charge, and you're trying to put over all of these new signees that have come in and joined the new bloodline, and they need to wrestle and show what they can do. And so they're kind of just in a weird spot where they can't really have Solo wrestle, but then he shouldn't be wrestling because, like, he needs to establish this character. And it's just interesting. I think that might be the reason that I'm so, like, that'll be okay. Because, like, I don't really think between now and SummerSlam, like, they're going to have a lot of work to do to make me think that Solo Sikoa could legitimately beat Cody Rhodes. All it feels like right now is that we're gearing up for the return of Roman Reigns into whatever this feud is going to be at the end of SummerSlam. So who knows? I'm not going to take anything away from everyone in the new bloodline and from Cody and his ability to sell a story and build a feud. So I will keep an open mind to it. But when they kind of started going this way, I just felt a little like, this just kind of feels hollow. And I think that's the best way I can explain why it felt that way. And on AEW, on their side of things, building towards Dynamite 250, like I said earlier, but some absolutely incredible matches this week with the finales for the Owen Hart Cup. And then just an odd decision in the middle of that, too. So sandwiched in between two unbelievable matches with insane payoffs, there was this Chris Jericho Samoa Joe match that probably should have been Samoa Joe destroying Chris Jericho after beating them at the pay-per-view a couple weeks ago, but I did not know that Samoa Joe is apparently being written off of TV to go film Twisted Metal Season 2, which, cool. That show was a huge surprise. I did not think it would be as good as it was, so I'm happy to be getting more of that, but I think the method with which they did it left a little bit to be desired. So Chris Jericho and Joe are fighting around in the back, and Chris Jericho knocks him out. The other guys, Big Bill and Brian Keith, come out and help triple team him and incapacitate Samoa Joe, and they put him up on a forklift. I don't know if Chris Jericho is forklift certified. That's a question for another day. They put him on this forklift, and then Chris Jericho at like 7 miles an hour maybe drives the forklift through some drywall with Samoa Joe on it, and the announcers doing the Lord's work here, selling it like he had just been smashed at 85 miles an hour against a brick wall. Apparently that is how Samoa Joe will be written off going forward. Now, it says that they should be filming through October, but that he'll have time in between, so he might be making one-offs and appearances and things, but what a downer of a way to end this feud, and if this is the pause button on Shibata, Hook, and Samoa Joe as a trio, it's a disappointing bit of a finish here, a bit of a cliffhanger, because those guys have been so much fun together, and Joe has had a huge positive impact on Hook's overall presentation and on Shibata's after, the never-ending Jericho feud. And then we have our Owen Hart Memorial Cup winners. Like I said, they will get their title shots at All In London at Wembley Stadium. Bryan Danielson defeated Hangman Adam Page in a grueling match that once again played into Bryan's ability to act like he's devastatingly injured better than just about anyone. And Hangman Page just going full unhinged in this new, darker heel version of himself. We also found out that he will be in Blood and Guts because Swerve came out earlier in the show and said he would be in Blood and Guts. So then Hangman was like, hey, you know how I said last week to the Young Bucks that I wasn't going to do it? Well, now my enemy's doing it, so I gotta, I got no choice, so I'm in. And that's the level of hater we should all strive to be honest. Like, if your enemy is like, I'm gonna do this, and it makes you so mad that you're willing to go, like, fight in 2 wrestling rings surrounded in steel cages, wrapped in, like, barbed wire and baseball bats and chairs and stuff, like, go nuts. Clearly there's a lot there, and that storyline continues to be one of the richest in wrestling in terms of themes and developments that they can still take it, angles that could still go through that rivalry. It's something that they're probably going to keep in their back pocket for years to come, because there's going to be fresh layers that you can pull off of that at basically any time you need it. But the real story comes out of the women's Owen Hart tournament, which Mariah May defeated Willow Nightingale in a great match that was the main event of the show, which is where I probably should have realized that something was wrong, or something big was going to happen, because Mariah May defeats Willow Nightingale and then runs up the stage to celebrate with Toni Storm, and they're all happy, and they're like, we'll figure out later, all in, like, whatever, this is a time to celebrate, and boom, Mariah May hits her with the belt, whips her with the belt, which was a little extra brutal, hits Luther with the belt, whips him with the belt, hits him again with the belt, kicks him low blow, and sends him off the stage into some tables. And then Toni Storm, I don't know, I'm pretty sure she like bladed super quick while the camera was away, because that woman was pouring blood. And they had this crazy shot where Mariah May is hitting her with one of her shoes, and like, it just looked like, I'm sure there was a way to do it to make it not look like absolutely brutal, but it looked unbelievable. It was such a well executed turn and just such a vicious beatdown that it instantly establishes Mariah May as like one of the top heels in the division, and honestly probably in the company. They're advertising her as scheduled to speak on the 250th episode of Dynamite, and I feel like that's going to be like in a show that's already teeming with big matches, and we will get to that in a second. In a show that is teeming with big matches already, that's like one of the like can't miss segments, because that storyline has been one of the best in all of wrestling over the last few months, and the way that they have booked it and developed Mariah May and established her as a character has been so well done that this turn really came out of nowhere. There was a moment where you can hear Toni Storm yelling Mariah, like, why, like, what is happening, and a lot of people online were really like moved by that. I saw a ton of people in the replies and just in general talking about like, dude, I didn't think I'd be this upset at a wrestling storyline, but this is really like messing me up. And I saw a lot of people comparing it to All About Eve in particular. Obviously the vintage Timeless Toni Storm character is pulling from those types of movies, so I thought that was kind of cool too. If you are unfamiliar, watch that. I'm sure it's free somewhere to stream. It is a classic for a reason, and it looks like we're off with this feud. I don't know what Wembley's gonna hold, because it kind of feels like the pinnacle of the story, and the to finish the All About Eve reference, she would have to take over and be on top. But I don't know, the viciousness of the beatdown was almost like Toni Storm can't get whooped like this and then also lose her title in the big match. So I'll be curious to see what happens in between. That next Toni Storm promo too is going to be cannot miss TV. This was just such a well executed angle, everything about it. And I did say AEW is stacking that 250th episode of Dynamite. These are the matches that have been announced so far. We have Nyla Rose versus Mercedes Moné. We have Will Ospreay versus MJF, which will open the show. And we'll have Swerve Strickland versus Kazuchika Okada, which those last two matches in particular could have been the All-In matches. They might still be the All-In match. Actually, no, Swerve and Danielson. But Swerve and Okada could be the main event at All-In and be like a must-see match. So the fact that they're doing all of this and the Mariah May promo and whatever else is still yet to be announced, they are clearly making an effort to put on just a huge night that showcases all of their talent, all of their biggest talent. So we'll see what that episode looks like, but MJF, Ospreay, and Strickland and Okada, and then even Nyla Rose and Mercedes Moné. Nyla Rose is someone that I'm a fan of whenever I see her wrestle. I think she doesn't get as many opportunities on the main broadcasts as she probably should. She's someone who really took a hit when, like, Dark and all of the YouTube shows went away when they started adding Rampage and Collision. It just felt like they haven't had much for her to do. I think I read that this is her second singles match on Dynamite in like a year, something like that. I'd have to look at the exact dates, but that's crazy. And I'm curious to see how she works with Mercedes, because something that Mercedes was always very good at in WWE was selling the offense of those bigger wrestlers, those bigger women in the women's division in WWE. So I'm curious to see what this is going to look like, because I think it could end up being a huge showcase for Nyla Rose to put her back into a more regular role on television. And I said it before at the start of everything, but this week has been a week of women's wrestling. Really, across every show and across every promotion, women have been the story. On Monday Night Raw, we had the return of Rhea Ripley, like I said. On Tuesday NXT, we had Sol Ruka and Kalani Jordan's match highlighted, which I will talk a little bit more about that in a bit, from Heatwave. Wednesday, AEW, obviously the shocking Mariah May turn on Toni Storm. Then on SmackDown, it was a lot of Nia Jax, who will challenge Bayley for the women's title at SummerSlam, and Tiffany Stratton, who is the Money in the Briefcase holder for the women's title match, kind of playing up that she could attack at any time, and a lot of the episode was built around that. And then outside of AEW and WWE, Stephanie Vaquer, who was last seen on AEW's Forbidden Door wrestling Mercedes Moné in like a breakout star-making performance, announced that she was leaving the company, had 2 titles that she just refused to drop, and left. So she was stripped of the titles, and a lot of people were like, okay, well, she has to be signing with WWE then, because AEW wouldn't do that. But even WWE is like, we're not going to do that. Like, we'll let people finish out their dates and then come back. So I don't know what happened here. That story is going to be an interesting one at some point. But this week, there were rumors that she was signing with WWE. She was stripped of her titles. The next day, they announced replacement matches to fill those vacant titles. The next day, she was announced as signed to WWE and coming to NXT. And now tonight, Saturday night, she had a match for WWE in Mexico already. So this is like the fastest timeline that I can remember. And I don't know what happened, but she put a lot of people on notice, myself included, with the Forbidden Door performance that she had, where she looked like an absolute superstar. And so now she goes to WWE, which has reportedly always been her dream, to go to WWE. And going to NXT, she's going to have a ton of great match opportunities there and showcase opportunities there. And I started wondering, because I know Julia is all but WWE bound as well, but was having delays to her start to help with other companies and finish up her responsibilities, and to also recover from a broken wrist that she had surgery on. So I started thinking, is Stephanie Vaquer like the temporary for Julia until Julia can get over there? Because the rumor had been going around that Julia was going to show up to challenge Roxanne at the end of NXT Heatwave. And obviously with the injuries and everything, that did not happen. That got pushed back. But she's wrestling again. She's cleared to wrestle and wrestling again. Wrestled this last week. And I don't know if this was just they had a chance to go out and get someone who has had a lot of buzz recently, and so they had to, or if there's a plan here for Stephanie Vaquer and Julia to be the 2 top feuding stars on NXT, or what it's going to look like. But I cannot believe that quickly we got two huge signings in the women's division for NXT, which was already a really strong women's division. And it's funny because you do see a lot of people that are WWE fans that are like, oh man, it's over. We got Stephanie Vaquer. This is it. And then like a month ago, they were tweeting like, who is this woman that Mercedes Moné is wrestling? Like, who is this? So I don't know the need for that. I'm not super familiar with any of her work outside of the Forbidden Door match with Mercedes, but that was enough to sell me. I'm sure she's going to go into NXT and run that place before too long. And a match with her and Julia has money all over it, like just print money at that point. So that was a huge story that in both the fact that it happened and they moved so quick to get her. That was a huge story because, yes, it was big that she was leaving so suddenly to jump over to WWE, but also just the speed with which WWE was like, we signed her. She's here. She's in Mexico. She's wrestling tonight. Like, it was less than a week. It was probably 4 days from when the tweet first went up that she was being stripped of those titles and no one knew what her next move was, to being announced and being, like, on the main WWE Twitter account on Saturday walking into the arena. It's crazy. Unfortunately, too, I said it a little bit ago, there was a great women's match at Heatwave for the NXT North American Women's title between Kalani Jordan and Sol Ruca that was awesome. It was super cool. It was super fun and athletic. It had a great pace to it. It took certain moves straight from Ricochet and Will Ospreay's groundbreaking match from years ago. Like, side by side, the choreography was exact, to the point that Ricochet even tweeted, like, this is sick. Like, this is awesome. Ospreay did not, because I'm sure he's probably been told, don't do that. If you can avoid doing that, please don't. But it was clear that everyone that was supposed to be, honored by it, like, took it the right way and was like, this is so cool. The only people that did not seem to enjoy it were Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, who spent a long time talking about it and referred to it as like a gymnastics match and not really even a wrestling match, and what is happening, and it's unrealistic, and it was dumb. It was a really dumb thing to say, because obviously AEW features a lot of wrestlers that have a lot of choreography and a lot of athletic maneuvers in their matches. Will Ospreay has, like, I think 13 5-star matches or higher already this year, and I think like WWE as a company has like 5 or something crazy like that already. And literally this match was taking stuff from Will Ospreay and Ricochet, like from those matches that Alvarez and Meltzer both really liked when it was those guys. And it just feels weird. It feels pointless to be really liking one thing and not liking the other, and then also coming out and being like, but I'm not, like, biased. Like, I'm not. And there was something they said about, it's not like I didn't enjoy the match, it just felt too planned and too choreographed and this or that, but, like, at some point you have to just enjoy the athletic ability that you're seeing, and you have to just enjoy the match that you're being shown. And the fact that Sol Ruca was someone who had struggled in a couple matches leading up to this Heatwave performance, and then right after had a match where she just did not seem to get the timing right, it made it even more impressive that they were able to put it together and put on such a seamless, great match. And I don't understand the need to critic, because then they said, oh, we didn't say we hated it. We just said it felt like this and the XYZ. And, like, if you enjoyed it then, if you didn't hate it, if you're not like, why did I watch this? This was pointless. There's no need to be like, well, I liked it, but, like, all that's going to get taken is the negative things, or the perceived negative things. And I'm just shocked that two tenured journalists like that would pretend to be surprised that there would be an outrage at them, seemingly having such a double standard. Like, you would think people whose whole life is promoting their work through social media would understand the game of social media. I don't know, it just was a weird thing to see explode into controversy Monday, Tuesday this last week. Like, this is what we're going to spend our time on rather than just giving to women's wrestlers that were not wrestlers a year ago, 2 years ago. Like, they did not wrestle until they stepped into the WWE Performance Center and then went out there and duplicated spots from Ricochet, Will Ospreay, and had all sorts of other stuff featured as well. It just feels pointless. It feels like a pointless, needless kicking while they're down when they're not down. I don't know what the phrase for that is. It was just poor form. I just did not understand that at all. If you've not seen that match, please check it out for yourself and let me know your thoughts. That's one that I think people should see and have their opinion on. Maybe it's not for you. That's totally cool too. But it just, it deserves to be judged on its own merits. The main thing I wanted to talk about today was John Cena and his announcement that he would be retiring in 2025. He clarified it more in the Money in the Bank media scrum after, and he said, I'm going to wrestle 30 to 40 dates is what I'm looking at tentatively right now, all through January through December. I'm going to do all the big shows, and I'm going to do everything I can while still juggling all my other commitments and things. And he was interesting too because he said it in his promo, which was very nice. And then in the media session afterwards, he said, this will be the end of my in-ring career. And he's specifically made a point to say, he doesn't have interest in running out there and doing a spot, in 5 years. And, obviously those things can change. He may change his mind and get the itch to make an appearance or anything, but he seemed to have the idea that the appearances he wants to make are going to be in a different capacity. And that this is truly closing the book on that era of him as a pro wrestler in-ring performer. And obviously, when you hear John Cena's retiring, they've gone out of their way to call him the greatest of all time every chance they can. Big Match John Cena, Big Match John, if you're a JBL commentary listener. Your mind immediately goes to, well, who is he going to wrestle? What are those matches going to be? What is his SummerSlam match going to be? What is his Royal Rumble going to look like? WrestleMania, obviously. Who gets the last match? This was the first time that I was really disappointed when he announced his retirement and talked about it more. One of the first thoughts I had after his press conference was damn, I wish Edge and Bryan Danielson were not in AEW. Because those two guys feel like you can't really tell the John Cena story without the both of them. Obviously, I don't think they're going to bring JBL back in to run back the First Blood match or the I Quit match or anything. Those brutal-ass matches that they had when John Cena was still establishing himself. So, Edge, or Adam Copeland, and Bryan Danielson feel like two of the best foils in Cena's career. And there have been a lot, but fortunately there are still a couple there. I think clearly you can't really do anything with Cena on a retirement tour without having Cena, CM Punk in some capacity, and Cena and Randy Orton in some capacity. I wouldn't really be shocked if Randy Orton was the last match, if that was the retirement match for Cena. The other big question that I have is, what is going to happen with the WWE titles? Will Cena hold one of those belts? Will he hold the Undisputed Heavyweight title? Will he hold the World title? Because that dude is a 16-time world champion, tied with Ric Flair. Will they let him break that record? Does he want to break that record before he goes? There is so much there that can be used on screen as well to tell this story if he's truly going to be, pretty consistently available for the entire year. I just think it's such a rich storyline here. The will they, won't they, can he do it? Can he get over the top one last time on this last ride? I think it'd be incredibly compelling to watch unfold. I really want to see him wrestle a lot of the younger guys. Cena has looked really good when he's been back and been in the ring. Obviously, he got squashed in the Solo Sikoa match to make Solo look super strong a couple years ago. He lost to Austin Theory at WrestleMania a couple years ago as well. But we know he can still go and put on those performances. So I really hope we get matches with some of these new call-ups, like Ilya Dragunov, Braun Breaker. The match I really want to see is Carmelo Hayes. I think Trick Williams and John Cena, if Trick Williams ends up getting the call up, could have a great match. I think someone like Pete Dunne or Tyler Bate could have good matches with John as well. I think it'd be really interesting to see. I think the money match that everyone wants, though, that isn't retreading an old feud or putting him with a super up-and-comer on the roster, is John Cena Gunther. And I think Gunther is one of those people that is uniquely equipped to get a great match out of John Cena, because he's getting great matches out of anyone he wrestles at this point. He's really been on the top of his game for a very long time. But Cena isn't someone who's usually like ragdolled around. It's what made the Brock Lesnar squash match with Suplex City debuting so shocking, was people had not seen John Cena get destroyed like that. And I think with Gunther, there's a chance there to really play up like his dominance by having him be someone that really gives Cena a hard time and can create a strong feud between the two of them. So I would not be surprised if that was penciled in for at least one pay-per-view main event or second to last match, because I think that is just too obvious. And then the rest is gonna probably just be like booked by vibes, if I had to imagine. I'm sure Cena is someone who has probably a lot of say in what he's a part of, and he knows he's got a great mind for the wrestling industry, so it's not like he's gonna, shoot anything down without giving it thought. So I think everything's on the table, and I think that's a really cool spot to be in with someone as iconic as John Cena is. Like, whether you liked him or not, he's a pillar of his generation of WWE, and he carried that company for so long that he deserves to get that retirement tour. However it's going to look, it should look how he's picturing it. I was also thinking about how weird it's going to be to probably see him not get booed or get hit with the Cena sucks chants for an entire year here, and I was trying to remember if that's ever happened before. It might still happen. It might be the term of endearment, like the Kurt Angle "you suck" or anything like that. But it feels like this is going to be a huge feel-good, like everyone's behind John Cena and appreciating what he's doing, because these last few returns and runs that he's done have had that similar like feel to them of like, man, he doesn't have to be doing this right now, but he's here and he's doing it, and he's doing it really well because it matters to him. Like you can tell how much he cares. And that's not always the case for people that leave and come back and make those appearances. Oftentimes it is, because coming back in the first place takes a tremendous amount of dedication, I'm sure, when you have all sorts of stuff outside of wrestling. But I'm sad to see him go. I'm excited to see him get this opportunity to tell these stories and put on one more year of matches and showcasing his ability. And it's a huge boost for WWE, obviously, going into Netflix deal in January and everything else they have coming up. The giant Minnesota or the Vegas WrestleMania, the Minnesota SummerSlam, I think. They have the huge deal announced with Indiana, where they're going to have all three of the major pay-per-views in Indiana in 1 year. They're going to have the Rumble, SummerSlam, and Mania. It's crazy to see. And so this is obviously huge for WWE, but I really have a lot of faith that this is going to be one of those things that is done to perfection. I think, all things aside, all judgment aside, and everything, all bias aside, I think that WWE should absolutely look to how AEW handled Sting's retirement and his last run after the announcement of his retirement, and go leading up to that last date. I really think that is one of the better booked retirement runs into final matches that I can remember. So I don't think it would be smart to just ignore that because it was an AEW thing. I'm sure they're going to look everywhere for ideas, but I think that was done as close to perfection as it could possibly be. So I hope that that's something that they can kind of pull inspiration from, at least to an extent, because Cena, being such a pillar of the company and such a well-known face of the wrestling industry, entertainment industry, whatever you want to say, they need this all to unfold properly, so it doesn't feel like, man, we squandered the last year of Cena and blew it and ruined the send-off for one of our greatest wrestlers of all time. Don't think that's going to happen, but got to put it out there just in case. I can't be completely biased out here shilling like they're going to do nothing wrong. It's going to be perfect. No, no. They got to get it right. And I'm sure everyone feels the added pressure to get it right because it is John Cena. So we will see what 2025 looks like when we get there. That feels like 1,000 years away right now with how much we still have left to go. So I think that's everything. If you have a favorite John Cena match or memory or anything like that, please let me know. Hit the comments. I will put an email address in the description, show notes. Send in emails if you would prefer. Love to hear any John Cena matches, moments, promos, anything like that. The first one that comes to mind for me is we have caught and compromised Osama bin Laden to an end in the middle of the live show. That just incredible. I don't know, like Cena being the one to deliver that to that crowd, just unbelievable. I don't think he realized in the moment that was going to live on forever. But it is incredible. That's one of the first things that I think of, to be completely honest. So let me know what you think. I do have the matches to watch this week. Every week I like to recap some matches. So in case you don't have time to watch every show, all of every show, anything like that, here are a few matches that you should absolutely check out before the start of the next week when it all goes back up again. Thank you for watching, listening, anything, anywhere you get your shows, podcasts, anything like that. I greatly appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great week. From NXT Heatwave, if you have not watched Kalani Jordan versus Sol Ruca, I said it earlier, but please give that a watch because those two women went out there and put on a show. I've also got Trick Williams and Joe Hendry versus Ethan Page and Shawn Spears, main event of this last week's NXT. And then on AEW Dynamite, we have the two final matches for the Owen Hart tournament. We have Hangman Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson on the men's side, and Mariah May versus Willow Nightingale on the women's side. And it goes without saying, but if you watch the Mariah May Willow Nightingale match, watch it all the way through to the end because the promo or the beatdown on Toni Storm afterwards is absolutely insane, and it instantly makes it one of the most interesting angles, more interesting than I would have ever thought, because I was already super interested. I did not think it could get more interesting, and they just immediately ripped everyone's hearts out, and off we go. So if you did not see any of those, please catch up with those before the start of the next week, and I will see you next week.